Welcome back viewers. We have already seen the previous session how aerial photograph is taken, how important is to maintain the verticality, and also various types of aerial photographs like oblique photographs, vertical photographs and things. Now let us see or continue from there where we were discussing about the flight design or the pattern in which you are supposed to take a aerial photograph. So if we look at this slide, you will find that this is the way in which the flight path is taken into account. You find that exposure station 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and the aeroplane will take a turn, come back here. So you can very importantly you can see how the overlap is taken, about 60% I told you. So this is what is your overlap. So between photograph 5 and 6, 4 and 5, 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 2 and 3 you will find an overlap. Apart from that between 6 and 7, so as I told the flight will just take a turn like this and come. While coming it will take the next strip, and they also maintain in such a way that you will have a end lap over the side lap of we say 20 to 40%, sometimes 15% also. The greater the overlap, the greater will be the number of strips. So depending upon the application we do that. Now here between 6 and 7 also you will have overlap, so that you will not miss out any detail. So that is the purpose of the idea behind. Now you see here, this is what is the way in which it goes. This is an artificial method of this is designing and this is true. You see here just for depiction purpose we have just shown you how the photograph is taken and how the area is overlap. See, this is what is your side lap, you see the overlap of 60%. So this will be one photograph and this will be another photograph and this darker patch will be your overlap area. Now what are the important characteristics of computation for going for a flight plan? So we say the focal length of the camera, which I have been telling you right from the beginning, which will decide the scale of the photograph, and the flying height. These two will decide what is the exact scale of a photograph. Size of the photo again depends on what is the kind of application. Invariably it will be 9 inches by 9 inches, and area to be photographed. As I was telling you, total area, what is the total size area which is required. Apart from that we take a little extra on either side so that we do not miss out any other thing. That is what I told you, the outer flight lines. Obviously deciding about overlap and side lap is also equally important, and scale of flight map. This will again I told you the focal length and the height will decide the scale. If I know I am going to take at a specific scale, then this I cannot change, because this will be a feature which is a characteristic of the camera. This I can change, because simple words f by h, focal length by height will be the scale. Hence we know that if I can change this, I mean if I want to have a better scale or improved scale or large scale, depending upon that I go away from the land surface or come close to the land surface. And definitely to decide on the speed of the aircraft, we will have to decide how many number of exposures are required, what is the overlap percentage. If the overlap percentage is 30, then the number of exposures will be less. If the overlap is more and more, the number of exposures will be obviously more, isn't it, for one particular strip. So once it make complete strip, second strip, it will become a block of photographs, 1, 2, 3 and so forth. So based on that we will try to obtain the data. Now you can see this how aerial photographs are mosaicked. You can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is how aerial photographs are mosaicked. Of course, this is one method of just indicating how it is mosaicked, and you can see that areas are overlapped, and the overlaps are all removed, and it is be one particular unit. So photo mosaic we call it as. And this is what I was telling you about your stereo pair. You can see this stereo pair here, and this stereo pair always it's important for one to know how effectively you have the percentage of overlap and what is that you can identify. You can see here this object and this object and this, but once you come beyond this you do not have anything, and once you go beyond this you do not have a common area. Hence this area alone will be appearing as 3 dimension when I am using a stereoscope. Yes, this is what I was telling you about the stereoscope. This is called as a pocket stereoscope. A pocket stereoscope is used in say field activities. So when you have to have a sudden idea about a 3 dimension, we use the pocket stereoscope. Yes, in photogrammetry what kind of studies? I told you any kind of changes or variations or any corrections to be made, it will become a geometric, and you want to make any measurements of it. If you want to interpret the data just for qualitative study, you call it as photo interpretation. In geometric again we normally use what is known as your single photo or it is based on single photo or orthophoto, it's what is called as. And to generate an orthophoto, one of the most important or expensive process, we go for analog methods, analytical methods and your digital. So, analog plotters, analytical plotters and digital. So, these are the three methods in which you can generate a single photograph as a orthophoto. You can convert rather, because this is what I was telling you, the tilt to tip and the toe are corrected and the photographs are generated. So, when you talk about photo interpretation, again this geometric correction, when you go on stereo models. So, when you talk about that spatial, when I am going to have a make a kind of a measurement. So, this is done, say for example, measurements are made in 3-dimensional. So, using the similar plotters, instead of just generating a single photograph, we use a stereo model, that is 2 photographs, and then similarly we also go for analog, which is both graphical and numerical, semi analytical or analytical and digital. Both the cases both the same, but the only thing is digital analogy, digital technology, we go for mathematical models. So, these stereo plotters invariably it is out of use now, most of them are replaced by digital technology, but still stereo plotters will be of immense use when you have less number of photographs, where the cost of investment in digital technology is high. So, when you have small area, small number of less number of photographs, you can use analytical or analog methods of correcting the data. When you talk about the geometry of photographs, two things are important here, the orthographic projection or the perspective projection. So, what we try to use or say is that in the case of orthographic projection, each and every point is projected normal to the reference plane. That means something like raindrops which is falling from here. So, when you have a say your sky, from here drops are falling like this. So, each and every point is projected normal to this reference plane, whereas perspective projection, which is a very ideal one, wherein which we use projection in such a case which is projected from central point. So, from here, so for example, say off. So, all of them are projected like this. So, in the first case each of them is perpendicular to the ground surface, the second case it is inclined like this. This is what is called as a perspective projection. Okay. So, naturally what will happen, because you are using the analogy of projecting it from different position, you are getting a 3 dimension. So, that is a very important thing. So, just now I told you about how I will be getting a 3 dimension. So, when I am looking at an object from 2 different directions, this is what is exactly perspective projection. So, I am looking at that object from 2 different location, right eye and the left eye, and I am actually looking at that particular object. So, obviously, I will be getting the 3rd dimension, that is what is the perspective projection. Orthogonal projection is nothing but sending kind of light rays exactly parallel to one another, they will never be coinciding with each other. Of course, when you talk about what is known as a principal point, very important aspect of aerial photograph is nothing but the center of the photograph. So, this is what is obtained by joining the fiducial marks at the points at the corners of the photograph. Yes, principal point is this one, you can see here a cross wire like, and this is the principal point, and these are the fiducial marks which are marked on the photograph, and they are joined together to obtain a say principal point. This will be the center of that, and like any other image or like any other context where we use say a lens, the central part of the aerial photograph will be very accurate. As you move away from the central part of the aerial photograph, obviously the scale will be varying because of the lens aberration. I think that part you know very well. So, that is the reason I was telling you, when I am taking the aerial photograph, my principal point will decide what will be the common area, presuming that only that area is accurate, only the common area will be accurate. That is the reason when I am generating a 3-dimensional model out of 2 different aerial photographs, I will be getting an accurate 3-dimensional model, and it will be as far as possible accurate in terms of your free from any aberrations. So, we use the films and the focal length. I told you the focal length of the camera, of course, need not bother about the definition part of it. Focal length of the camera, as everybody knows, that will decide I told you the scale of the photograph. The greater the focal length, then you can decide what will be the height, then you can get a good quality. If the focal length is good more rather, you will get high quality aerial photographs. Yes, the most important application or basic concept of aerial photography is the scale of the aerial photograph. You know what is the scale? It is nothing but photo distance to ground distance, the ratio between that. So, 4 centimeters by 1 kilometer will be 1 on 25,000 scale. So, this is how normally you calculate, but when you come to the aerial photography, there is a slight variation or difference in that. So, we try to use in aerial photographs the height and the focal length. I told you earlier, the focal length divided by h, that is f by h is the scale of an aerial photograph. Invariably f by h is that, and very importantly you should remember that not all objects are of the same height, isn't it? You can never find all the objects on the earth's surface of the same height, they are all different heights. Obviously, when I am looking at the road and a tall building, the scale will vary. So, that is the reason we do not directly use f by h, we use f by h minus h, h minus h, that is capital H minus h, nothing but height of plane above the ground, as far as we also consider the height or the elevation above the ground of that object. So, naturally when I am using this, that will get nullified, and the focal length, then obviously I will get the scale part, focal length is taken into consideration here. So, in the case of a vertical photograph, what they try to do is, or what they tend to do is that they take the average scale, because I told you in perspective the advantage is you get a third dimension, but the scale will vary because it is taken from a central point viewed at various places. Whereas, in the case of vertical photograph or orthophotograph, you find that the verticality is maintained and all the points are vertical to the subject, to the datum. So, that is an important concept here. So, we say that the datum scale will take into consideration, and in such a case we go for h minus h average, that is the average height of the objects or the buildings which are present. Now, if you know the focal length and the height of the object, we can easily calculate the, say, your scale of the, so you can see depicting, this is the focal length and this is the height. Naturally, focal length, of course, just making it little more detailed, this is the focal length and this is the height. That is what we call as the flying height of the aircraft above sea level, height of the object above the height of ground or object above sea level. So, this is what is your h minus h. So, to make a simple calculation, if a camera's focal length is 152 millimeters and the altitude above the ground level is your, say, 7600 meters, what will be the scale of the photograph? So, 152 by 7000 meters, you just convert to millimeters and the scale is 1 on 50,000 scale. So, the way in which we express, isn't it, 1 on 50,000, 1 is to 50,000 and things like that. So, when you take a two-dimensional measurement from a photograph, or to take a general distance, you can measure the distance as well as you can also measure the area. So, that is what is your, that is what we can do when the scale is uniform and is correct. If the scale is wrong, it will be very difficult to make measurements on that. And I told you also the same case, you have to require the 3 dimension, to create a 3 dimension you require 2 pairs and the scale is also obtained or applied on that, and we get that. You see here, very important, how you get the third dimension, how do you get the height of the object. So, we use what is called as the parallax. So, parallax is the most important context wherein which how to get the height of the object. So, parallax is how it is done, h minus dp, p plus dp. So, where h is the height, you know, above the ground, aircraft height, p is equal to the absolute parallax of the object and dp is the differential parallax. See how important, h minus dp divided by p plus dp. Of course, you may be wondering what exactly I am trying to say, we will just see that a little later. So, what we are trying to use, that the concept of, I told you, triangulation method. So, when you are using triangulation, the sense sending of light rays from different position and making it to intersect. When it is intersecting at a particular point, when the light rays are falling from 3 different positions, it will create a kind of a, say, your triangle. If it is coinciding accurately, then you will have a point data. So, that is what is important part. So, we normally use the triangulation principle to get the depth perception. I told you, for creating or getting a triangulation, we have to have at least 2 different locations. So, the line of sight, just now I told you about that to get. So, line of sight from 2 different locations of a single object, eye is a good example for that again. So, right eye, left eye, and you just drop the perpendicular, the light rays passes through or a line is drawn and it intersects and you get a third dimension. Yes, I have been telling you about parallax all the time. So, what exactly is the parallax is? It is nothing but displacement or difference in the apparent position of an object when you are viewing this object from different directions here, different lines of sight. So, a good example, let me just show you that. When I am just projecting my finger in my front of my eyes, this is closer, and if I am looking at this object finger from a close distance, this will appear as 2. I think you know that. When I bring it closer and closer, it becomes 2. That means indicating that this finger is actually 2 different objects, isn't it? As though it is 2 different objects. But when I move away my finger, looking at that same thing, when I go away from my line of sight, it just coincides at a particular point. That is the distance. So, if you want to know the distance between the point of origin and the point of destination, you have to have a parallax. So, this is what is beautifully explained here, depicted here. You can see here the pencil or a finger what I am looking at. If you just look at it here and you see how far it is from here. So, the closer the object, the greater will be the parallax. The farther the object, the better will be the say your parallax will be less and the quality will be more, and I will be in a position to look at the object as a single object. So, because the pencil is very close to the eye, it appears to be displaced very far off, whereas this building or an object beyond that is farther away, it is appearing to be closer to each other. How we normally use in the case of here, say finding the distance using the parallax error. So, distance between 2 stars, say how it is the nearby star and the farther away star. So, all self explanatory you can see here, and then you get it once you get the parallax value, and you will be in a position to find out the say the distance. So, this is what I told you, say between March and September, 2 different periods, that is looking at the same object from 2 different positions, something like looking at this object star during March and September. Obviously, Earth would have rotated and also revolved, and you will find. So, this is what is the beautiful way of getting distances between objects in space. You can see here, and similar concept is also applied in say aerial photography. You can see here on the left side the building is tilted in this direction, on the right side it is tilted in this direction. So, towards right and towards left. So, when I can just make a 3 dimension, this will just merge. It is a really beautiful concept, you will have to experience it to understand that. So, when I get this one will become a single object, and I will know the height of this point and this point. If I know height of these 2 points, definitely I will be in a position to get the height of the object. So, that is what we normally use in the case of your say getting the height of the object. Say this is what I was just showing you now. You have here the aerial photograph taken negative, and the principal point which I have shown you the joining of 2 fiducial marks, from a line joining 2 fiducial marks, and from here this will be your focal length f, and this will be h. So, the parallax will be like this. From this particular point we are viewing here. So, this will appear different, this will appear different. So, this will help us to determine the height of the object. So, see how beautifully they are able to do that. So, this is what we otherwise called as relief displacement. Relief, I think you should be knowing what is relief. Relief is nothing but the difference between the point of highest elevation and the lowest elevation in a given area. So, the displacement of relief will decide and get you or provide you with very valuable information, namely the height of the object, which is not possible in single dimension. I think that you will have to agree, whether it is aerial photograph or satellite images. Of late they are also getting satellite data say in 3 dimension. We will not be in a position to get the 3rd dimension unless otherwise you have a stereo pair, but in either of the cases. Once I have the stereo pair, once I get the overlap, I have the 3rd dimension. Once I have the 3rd dimension, I will be in a position to get the say height. So, the relief displacement will decide height of the object as such. So, I am just telling you about relief displacement, especially or when it is perspective in projection. As I was telling you, 2 types of, one is your vertical photographs, where in which you also have the orthophotos, where the this one is all the lines are perpendicular to the ground surface and parallel, whereas perspective from particular point you will be looking at different places, and that helps in you to get the relief displacement. So, using the simple formula h is equal to d of h dash divided by r will decide the height of the object. Yes, finding out scale of the satellite, your satellite image or your photograph for that matter. Scale is a very important factor, wherein which what we try to use that say is that we try to obtain the scale in different ways. But whereas in the case of aerial photographs, we use the flying height and the focal length, its ratio. If you have more than one object, you take the average and then subtract and get the values of your scale. How do you express the scale? Scale can be expressed in different ways. We say it's either it is unit equivalent or representative fraction or a ratio. So, naturally 1 millimeter is 25 meters, that is your way of expressing unit equivalent. The same thing when I am using representative fraction 1 by 25,000, ratio 1 is to 25,000. Then you should know what is a large scale, what is a small scale. Many people get confused with large scale and small scale. When I say large scale, small area, more detail is large scale. When I say small scale, large area, less detail. That means I am able to project or depict large area in a small sheet of paper. That make it become smaller scale. Many people have got confused also when I say 1 on 5,000, 1 on 20,000, they think that 5,000 is small scale and 20,000 is large scale. It is not true, isn't it? So, 20,000 means 1 unit on the map is equal to 20,000 units on the ground. So, you should know that difference, small scale map, large scale map. So, depending upon various types of application, whatever is required to us, we decide whether you want a small scale map or a large scale map. So, scale will decide and that has to be done effectively and decide the scale and then obtain aerial photographs based on the scale and focal length will get a good quality data. Taking or mapping from a single photograph, some of the common techniques what we using it. So, taking or photographing from a single photograph is nothing but orthophoto mapping. So, orthophotos, as I was just telling you, the biggest advantage in orthophotos is that you will not have any scale or relief, tile relief distortions. That is why they are called as photo maps. In the sense, you can directly start making any measurements on that using only 2 dimensional. You can't get the third dimension because it's a orthophoto 2 dimensional. But the advantage is that you will not have any error with respect to the scale. Scale will never be different, incorrect rather. So, you will have the advantage of using the orthographic projection, where in which the various rays are falling parallel to each other and always perpendicular to the surface. So, hence scale distortion or relief distortion will not be there in that case. This is best for both worlds, that is both your GIS and remote sensing kind of studies, and it becomes a big input into GIS. So, that is what normally many people try to use that. Digital format of data. So, now you are I was just telling you about orthophoto. So, do not get worried, oh, if in that case are we supposed to always create or generate a orthophoto in hard copy? It is not required. You can go for a digital format of orthophotograph. So, even at the time of applying or getting a data from NRSA, you can always seek either orthophotos in hard copy or in soft copy format. So, if you go for hard copy, it is relatively cheaper, soft copy it will be little costlier depending upon the area and the coverage. So, what we try to do is that in the case of your generation of the orthophotos, we go for analog orthophotos, wherein which we are supposed to correct the corrections or the errors rather. I told you the tilt, tip and the toe, we call it as a differential rectification, and using orthophotoscopes we can make the corrections and then prepare the orthophoto negative and finally go for a digital or a hard copy orthophoto. So, that is what is the process involved in orthophoto mapping. Mapping from stereo photographs, I was just telling you about how important stereo photographs are, how well you should be in a position to use the stereo photographs. These stereo photographs are important in sense by making a stereo pair, though it is expensive, we will be in a position to get a third dimension, and by using perspective projection we will be getting the height of the object. So, that is what is the advantage in the case of your stereo photographing. Some of the common techniques as already told you repeatedly is a aerial photograph, which is a stereo pair, which is the basic requirement. So, what we try to do is that in the case of say analog method, we will have 2 different projectors, 2 of them, but they will have both of them will have both the geometric properties as used in camera project and negatives of the stereo pair. In the sense when you are taking photographs, how will you look at the surface? Single eye, you just look at the object, okay, this is what I am going to take photograph, next exposition, next. So, when I am taking two different photographs, you will have to have two projectors and create a three-dimensional model or a model which is real to the world, how it is as akin to the real world model. So, that is a biggest advantage using your stereo plotters. Analog methods use that type of analogy and then create or generate a excellent three-dimensional model. I told you the rotation part of it, very important, the variation will be there, the x direction, y direction and the z direction. So, what the stereo plotter does is that we have three options, we have two hands and a leg, of course two legs are there, use one leg rather. One with the right hand we may correct the x direction, left hand we may correct the y direction and with the leg we will correct the z direction. See, all the three corrections are made simultaneously in such a way we will be in a position to rotate the datum of the aerial photographs. So, what is that we are trying to do? We are trying to say that aerial photographs are supposed to be taken with the aeroplane parallel to the surface, it is not possible. Hence, we know that as I was telling you x, y, z, all the three directions errors will be there. Now, I cannot go for the aeroplane, I cannot make changes in the aeroplane, I will have to make with respect to the datum what I have seen. So, what I will do is that I have two aerial photographs, I try to tilt in such a way all the in all the three directions, so that I will be creating a model which is akin to the original. Hence, as I cannot do anything with the aeroplane, I try to model or generate a three-dimensional shape of this particular. So, I create a model in such a way by rotating the axis x, y, z and get an excellent model that will be which will be free from all errors, and then it is known that the camera axis become again vertical here. Hence, the scale factor and all the factors are all removed, all errors are all removed, and analog plotters, of course, though it is not in use much, it is a simple technique. Of course, that was slowly replaced by say your analytical method. So, what they have started using is they started working on your analytical method of correcting the data. Instead of using a stereo plotter, they have started using computers. So, naturally computers will start managing the data, isn't it? You know that it is capable of doing any kind of correction. As I told you, in analog we have to do it, isn't it? You have to use your left hand, right hand, leg all simultaneous, then the efficiency of the operator is important. Whereas, when I am using an analytical technique, I have the advantage of using a computer. So, when I am using analytical techniques, what I will do is that I will instruct, I will just press of a button which part, which direction the movement has to take place. So, that will help me and that will make it much more accurate. So, that is the reason analytical plotters have come into existence and they started working on that, and once they found that even that is tedious, then they thought of what is known as your say digital photogrammetry, digital methods using, of course, all high end analogies technology, they use only digital technology. So, we use three dimensional, in either it is going to be digital or analog, and ultimately digital photogrammetry has become a very important one, though analytical is also possible. So, here what kind of technique can be used in say your either going to be digital or analytical. What it does is, I told you, a bundle adjustment has to be calculated, that is to what extent I have to move my, or what extent I have to orient my datum plane, because now I am left out only with the datum plane, I do not have any other alternative, I will have to organize or arrange this one. So, which is that to what extent, to which direction I have to move, if I just decide that then I just correct it and then go with that. So, what kind of analog instruments are there? Of course, as I told you, it is not that very much vogue in now. You know that an observation system, a projection system, measuring system, ultimately you can plot the data and also record the data. So, digital photogrammetry, as I was just telling you, photogrammetry has grown leaps and bounds. Though digital photogrammetry is a very expensive one, it is definitely very convenient and easy. Of course, many people or students, they tend to forget the concept part of it because they are not doing anything on their own. So, invariably they use an analogy or a technique which is available in a computer, simply use that and then come out with a product, but still it is not very difficult for one to understand. how digital photogrammetry has grown from where to where. Basically it was analog in nature, then it became computerized, and ultimately you have a digital technology. Now here photographs are also taken digitally. It is not no more photographing, no more films, no more negatives. Similarly, the analysis also become digital in nature. They are using the digital technology to the maximum effect because of the advent in improvement of various digital techniques and computerization. Now, what kind of applications? Any kind of application, basically wherever we are going to use any 3-dimensional model like architecture planning, manufacturing, police investigation or plastic surgery. Of course, plastic surgery may not be in our scope, a kind of a police investigation or manufacturing technology, or in the case of say your I told you about architecture. Let me see or show you one after the other, a simple method. So, this technique what we are going to use always is be useful, and you do not have the requirement or difficulty in working with your focal length. So, whatever you have in the analogy, you can just use that digital technology, because focal lengths are not there, because it is going to digitally image the data and then convert it. Okay. So, that is what we will do. So, let me show you one good example. An architecture building, a building which is there, namely the Parliament House, Melbourne. What they tend to do is that they just take photographs of this particular building from different directions and then use the digital analogy and convert it. You see here, as an architect you should be knowing how long will it take for you to reproduce this looking at this building. I do not know how exactly you will be doing, but in our context we say that it will take hardly 2 to 3 hours, provided I take proper photographs of these buildings and then orient them in such a way that is exactly horizontal, that is your axis is horizontal, and that technology is called as close range digital photogrammetry. So, the total thing is just taken as a photograph, high end cameras reproduce the structure, every detail which is present in the structure are brought back here. Otherwise, in my opinion it may take a long time when you are working with that. Similarly, in say police investigations, so we say how they use it in police investigations. You see here, no need to make marking. Probably you must all be aware, in India invariably they just mark it on the place of your accident. Here it is not like that. What they do is they just come to the particular point of your accident, take photographs of the accident spot from different directions and then analyze and find out to which is actually who is at fault, which vehicle has really committed the crime, or the driver rather. You can see here. So, this should have been, or this is the path and this is the output path. You can see how it is varied. So, or probably this is the original path and this is the way in which he has come and he has overcome or come up over and above the center median and affected the your traffic here. So, that sort of analogy is possible. Of course, not only in this set of an application, in civil engineering applications, I am just telling you about your construction of a dam and a reservoir, how well you can use photogrammetry, especially close range photogrammetry. Here you find that if you want to go for a dam, an arch dam or a dam wherein which you know that you can get the 3-dimensional model of this particular thing by taking a photograph, isn't it? By just taking a photograph and setting up artificial targets or getting the xy of this any point using a GPS, we can generate the model as it is in the field in the laboratory, and what we can do is that we can identify the actual structure of that. This normally is done either to create a new or to develop a new dam and a reservoir, or to study the cracks or any problems or fractures which are normally taking place in a reservoir, because you know that the water which is impounded on the dam will affect the dam, isn't it. So, in such a case it is not possible for you to survey the entire area. So, what is that they do is they try to take a photograph and then identify the fine cracks. That is a very simple method. Of course, it is again a difficult thing, but still you can do it. It is a very simple analogy, and once you know where the cracks are present, it will become much easier for you to work on the remedial measures for that. Yes, one important thing I have been repeatedly telling you is that 3-dimensional models will help you to generate a contour map. So, what we normally use is that aerial photographs which are normally taken, either it is going to be analog method or your analytical method or your say digital methodology. We try to take aerial photographs and convert them into 3-dimensional model. We demarcate or find out the x, y, z of a known point and then interpolate that particular data to the surrounding area. So, the most important application from any kind of a satellite image or your say aerial photograph which is in 3 dimension is your contour mapping. But still, as I was just telling you, getting the 3-dimensional data from aerial photography is far superior than 3-dimensional data from satellite. Whatever may be the case, invariably we use aerial photographs for generating a contour or extracting a contour. Now, I want to go for 3D vector mapping of an urban area. So, this is a good example which may be of some use to you. Okay. So, what I thought is I can just show you this how well you can use this a vector mapping. A vector mapping is nothing but your 2-dimensional mapping, where in which I try to demarcate these objects. So, when I start working on that, what kind of extraction or how do you extract the data? So, by zooming level, by increasing the zoom level, we will try to find or try to locate or see the data is not distorted. Once I start zooming the data, obviously the data will get distorted. So, that is where the resolution of the camera which is being used will come into the play rather. So, we decide on that how to extract the data in a given terrain for mapping purposes. Let me say a test site we are going to work with. Say this is what is my total area. So, this I am trying to zoom it here. You see here, the moment I just do that inset part of it, this is the total area. The moment this appears to be as though it is little cumbersome, but still nothing is cumbersome here, because the data is of high quality taken from aerial photograph or digital aerial photograph rather. Now, we zoom the area and then you see how it is enlarged here, a part of the inset and this enlarged area. Make it little more bigger and then start demarcating it. So, I want to go for a vector data. There are two options here you have. Either you can use a digital technique, simple digitization on the data by simply going through along these lines and then demarcating them, or you can also use various algorithms which are there which will help you to convert the raster data into vector data. Of course, that will not be accurate, but you will have you can do it much faster. Accuracy may not be there, faster data will be there, but here in the case of your automatic conversion you will not have any control over the data. So, it is always preferable to go for semi-automatic or manual. Of course, manual, small area, small application, good. If it is a larger area, a very important application, you can't take time on that. So, we will have to improve upon the algorithm and then work, but still the data is available to you in some form or other. We try to use the data and then analyze the data and work on that. So, you see here, the more and more I enlarge, still even to this level it is not pixelated, still I am able to demarcate this object. You see, everything is demarcated, even the vehicles which are plying in the adjacent road are also demarcated. Of course, in our context, if it is going to be only building part, we are not interested in other objects, we are interested only in say the buildings. Because it is an automated demarcation, it has taken into consideration the surrounding area. We can just choose only those which are required to us. See, ultimately we are now trying to get the exact shape and size of that particular object. So, we call it as edge segmentation. Now, you see when manually when I am doing it, I am able to do this exclusively, because I am not bothered about the surrounding area, surrounding objects. So, I am able to take into consideration this one. So, this edge enhancement is done and you find the objects are neatly marked using your manual methodology. So, this is what we normally tend to do in the case of your say using any kind of method, either it is going to be automatic or manual. Ultimately, we will be getting outputs very accurately, and you can see finally the corners of a building how it has been demarcated using your say a manual technique or your automated technique. In either of the cases, you require a 2-dimensional object projected as a 3-dimensional object using 2 different aerial photographs, and then create a 3D model and finally demarcate. So, that is, as I told you, ultimate purpose of using either aerial photographs or satellite images. So, with this let us close the topic on aerial photography and photogrammetry. Thank you.